What's going on, everybody? Brett here, and we're back playing some more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. YouTube channel is, of course, Good Talk Gaming, and we are going to be doing another 2v2. This is game 2 of the kind of two-part series that I did with these players, and we had a lot of fun, and I definitely wanted to cast this game. It was a wild one. The terrain was probably the biggest factor in this entire battle, and yeah, we're going to get into it. I'm playing the Court of Liberus, using Khalida as my lord choice. My ally is going to be the Vampire Coast, and we are going to be up against the Skaven as well as the High Elves. So let's load in here and see how we end up deploying and how that makes a big difference on this particular map. So yeah, let's go into slow mode. So check this out. This plateau here is brutal for line of sight. My ally and I have some artillery. We have some long-range units. And this plateau is going to absolutely wreck us. Our opponents did something very unexpected. They deployed their entire army on the other side of this hill. So perhaps anticipating our artillery, perhaps, worrying about things like Queen Bess, who you'll see up on the hill here, they were very reluctant to begin their deployment on the top of this plateau. So it's a nice high ground position. And this lip here for us, if we have any units that stand, from about here to here, they're going to have no line of sight whatsoever onto the top of this hill, and that's going to be a bit of a problem for us. So let's go over, actually, let's do a little bit of a reverse than what I normally do, and just kind of in brief go over my opponent's armies. You'll see, of course, they have one Sun Dragon, giving them that aerial superiority, monstrous unit on the battlefield. They have the Fireborn, the elite anti-large Dragon Prince Cavalry, some Phoenix Guard in the background. You'll see some Swordmasters of Hoeth. Is there only one unit? Wow, perhaps only one unit of them mixed in with spears for a nice front line. I like, actually, yeah, here we go. Here's the second one. There's so much blob together, it's kind of hard to see. But they're going to pack that punch that the Skaven kind of miss out on, and that they're going to need if they're going to be able to chew through our front line as we march to meet them. Sisters of Avalorn, I see one unit. Perhaps these are just archers. Yeah, with some standard archers. I like that choice a lot. Standard archers are pretty cheap. I think they're 475 gold. They have good range. And with the Sisters of Avalorn providing the actual DPS to the very important targets, they do fire damage as well as magic damage. So that's going to be pretty brutal against, our combined armies, which are basically zombies and skeletons. So that fire damage is going to be relevant as well as the magic damage. They're also marching forward with a single Eagle Claw bolt thrower, and that's going to give them a little bit of an artillery presence from the High Elves, but also the Skaven have one unit there of the Warp Lightning Cannon, 2 units of Warp Lightning Cannons, and if they can get them on the top of this hill and start picking at good targets, they're going to have a pretty defensive position, just leaving them in the background here, because any units that we want to get in and amongst them with, we either have to come through the center, which is going to be very difficult with all this infantry, or we're going to have to find a way to get around, or over, with any kind of aerial presence that we may have. The Lord choice for the High Elves, I see here they have the Lord Master of Hoeth. They actually took some of the abilities. Let's go ahead and take a look at those. The Blessed Tome, providing leadership in an AoE. I like this when your ally is the Skaven. You can use a unit like the Lore Master just to prop up the leadership of Skaven, making some units like, Storm Vermins have amazing leadership. These dudes are almost unbreakable right now. 96 leadership on some of them, 89 on the other. But that's pretty huge. Spirit Leech for some draining, Earthblood for some heals. Earthblood is amazing on the Skaven because their units are so, dense that a lot of times you'll get into a pit fight and an Earthblood from a high elf ally is going to provide tons and tons of healing. Keep them fighting. Okay, and their lord choice is Tyrion. Is he on foot or is he on horseback? He is on horseback. So he has 125 armor. What abilities did he take? Did he take Sunfang? I pretty highly value Sunfang in 2v2s. We actually may need to pause it because it's getting a little difficult to kind of latch on to these choices. Here we go. So the Heart of Avalorn for some regen in case he gets low. Stand your ground is going to be great. Prop up that leadership of the Skaven once again. Feint and Riposte I think is an auto include on Tyrion. Huge melee defense, melee attack, and physical resistance buff every 90 seconds, and it lasts for almost 30 seconds. So it only has about a 60-second downtime. If you're using this consistently over the course of a battle, you can get a lot of value from that. And then Sunfang, does he only have one use of this? No, it's infinite uses, but 120-second cooldown. This does magical and fire damage, and against our two armies, like I said, magic and fire damage It's going to be absolutely brutal versus my formations of skeletons, as well as my allies' zombie pirate deckhand mobs. So, and then last but not least, Illyrian Reaver archers, just for some mobile cav presence. They can skirmish out pretty much anything. I mean, you just keep them out on the side, on the flanks, and see what you can pick. There's no real rhyme or reason. When you only have one of them, you're not really committing to a strategy. You're just trying to hope to get some incremental value from that one unit over the course of a long game. And then the front line here for the Skaven Clan Racks mixed in with Storm Vermin. I see an assassin in the front line here. No doubt he has trophy heads and concealment bombs. Okay, and slippery as well. So trophy heads can lower melee defense and melee attack by a huge amount. Only usable on lords or heroes though, so he's going to be looking to snipe somebody. And another assassin here to do the exact same thing. Lord Scroak is going to be summoning, no doubt. Libra Bubonicus for that draining effect, as well as probably some AoEs. I see Pestilent Breath for that's going to be some good damage if you can get a nice position on that. Rod of Corruption does the damage, and the Libra Bubonicus does damage as well. So the typical Scroak spells, and anything really unique. Gutter Runner Slingers here for a little bit of range. There's 2 of those. Pretty good medium ranged units. You know, if let's say the battle takes place here, this front line, you can just sit them right behind that front line and they'll shoot over the top. But then out to the flank here, we have a bit of a Vanguard deployment, which I'm going to spot because I suspect some tricky business here. And I'm going to send out my carrion. I have 2 groups of 2 carrion, so I have 4 in total. And I'm going to be sending them out to the sides to scout for us. And I'm going to discover these relatively quickly. Let's go into slow mode once again. More Gutter Runner Slingers, 2 units of those. They have some chevrons, interestingly enough. And then 2 units of Death Runners. These are the absolute killers. You'll see here they look like ninjas with the dual blades, with the warpstone pommels. They are amazing. They have high physical resistance, and they cause armor sundering, I do believe. If I can hover over them for just a second. Yes, they do. So they sunder armor on targets that they can get onto. Okay, so that's our opponents. And just now they're cresting this hill, and we're beginning to be able to see them. And as I move forward to scout out with the carrion to try and see, hey, what's all this funny business about? I wanted to make sure also, this is kind of a unique formation here, and I wanted to know what was on the other side of it. So, there we go. Sending out the scouts. Playing as the Tomb Kings, but going for High Queen Khalida. She has synergies in terms of archer units. So I decided to take that one ability, and I deployed thinking, there's Venom Wave, the Blessing of Asaf. So missile damage, reload skill, and armor-piercing missile damage and an AoE around her, and it's constant. I also have the Venom Staff, which shoots some magic missiles, and the Venom Wave, which does an explosion and an AoE around her, as well as her Curse if she drops below 50%. My front line is all cheap Skeleton Spearmen, just to hold long enough for our triple Ushabti Great Bow build to do tons and tons of damage. One of them is the Chosen of the Gods, the Regiment of Renown with their shrapnel fire. They're a pretty beautiful unit. And then one Bone Giant as well. I like them. They're pretty cheap for what they can bring, the versatility. They do magic damage. They have great range at 350. And then if they have to fight in melee, they're very good at doing that. And then in my back line, the King Nekef's Scorpion Legion. They have that poison damage, and they're just a solid unit that's very hard to break. Now, something unique about my build, something I just wanted to do because I felt like it was thematic. I brought 2 units of the Necropolis Knights. These are the ones with halberds. They're very good at fighting other cavalry units. And in a pinch, if you need to throw them into the front lines, they can do that as well. They cause poison, and they have anti-large armor-piercing values also. And then these units, which you almost never see, but I almost always bring them because I get a lot of value from them, the Sepulchral Stalkers. So poison damage on their missile attacks. So they'll sit back right behind your front lines or in a nice gap in your front lines, and they spit poison. And they only have 3 ammunition, but it does a ton of damage. And then you throw them in against large targets if you can. If not, try and put them on the best armor target that you can and watch them go to work. I have 2 units of those, and they're going to get pretty decent value for me this game. And I think last but not least on my army, I also have the Lich Priest of Nehekara with only 2 spells and the passive ability for the lore. So every time I cast a spell, I'm going to be healing my army. And then anytime I cast this spell, I get 44% physical resistance. That's Neru's Incantation of Protection. It's very cheap, very spammable. So I'm going to get lots of healing over the course of the battle. And then Sekhmet's Incantation of the Skull Storm. So a nice kind of AoE spell that I'm going to try and get lots of value on these blobbed up infantry if I can. All right. I'm going to run out of breath. I'm going to like pass out trying to do this commentary. But this was something that kind of bugged me. Let me pause it for a second. So my ally and I had this great position. We're on the top of this hill. We have range superiority thanks to Queen Bess. 450 range on that thing. And my ally decides to advance. So I didn't agree with this. I don't know if we weren't really chatting much, but I really wish he had held his position because I felt like our opponents had to come to us. I think he has a gunnery white as well. I think if you take Queen Bess, it's an auto include to take a gunnery white. He does. So with a gunnery white plus Queen Bess, you can end up getting like, I don't know, maybe as much as 40 shots off with her. She's the most powerful artillery piece in the game. And I say she because it's a queen. But huge earth-shattering damage, and it actually has an effect on hit called monstrous impact, so negatives to speed and charge bonus. But from this distance, and with its parabolic arc, Queen Bess can shoot over and smash these things. You'll see they're already taking huge damage from her. There was really no reason whatsoever for us to be the ones advancing forward. But in a 2v2, you can't just leave your ally hanging, right? If he thinks he wants to advance, the worst thing I can do is say I'm not going to support him because it's a bad move, and then, you know, really screw us both over. But this is the problem, guys. As we go into his build, I'm going to explain why. His front line, cheap chaff units, if he wanted to throw those on the top of this hill, just to keep them pinned on top of this plateau, boom, that would have been a solid play. But what he ends up doing by doing that is he advances with his entire formation, probably has them all hot grouped and, you know, just click them forward. He has all of these gunnery mobs. So let's see, there's the black spot, the gunnery mob here. They just have a little bit of an anti-large bonus. He has 2 units of deck gunners and then also the Shade Wraith gunners, who are the ethereal variant that do magic damage. And yeah, so here's another set of handgunners. When he sets them at the bottom of this hill, or at the very top of this hill with a bunch of units directly in front of them, they have no line of sight. He has all of this gold spent into these, you know, 6 units. Also, you can probably include the gunnery white in that as well. And he's not going to be able to use any of them for this entire engagement. It would have been much better had we just sat back and used the Queen Bess to draw them in closer. And then, you know, I could have skirmished a bit with the Ushabti. My Bone Giant would have had a great line of sight from the top of the hill. We were basically forcing them to come to us. They had 2 Warp Lightning cannons, but a couple shots from Queen Bess can knock them off of that pretty easily. And he's also kind of forgetting, it looks like, some of these units back here. The Lamprey's Revenge. These are the Rotting Promethean gunnery mobs, but they have regeneration, which is kind of the big thing about them. Very tanky unit. And some Zombie Pyro Deckhand mobs just kind of in the back. And ooh, I didn't even notice these before, but these are the Salt Lord Scuttlers, the Bombing Regiment of Renown variant. They have a special ranged weapon. They drop bombs and their missiles sunder armor. So holding them in reserve kind of makes sense because they're a pretty expensive and squishy unit. And you want to try and get the maximum value you can from a unit like that. And let's see, there's only 2 things left to go over. The Death Guard, these are the standard variant, anti-infantry, very good at chewing through Skaven and high elf, low tier infantry alike. They regen as long as they are in melee combat, and they also have Frenzy and Cause Fear. And let's see here, we also have Count Noctilus. So good choice on foot. Makes him much cheaper than if you had brought him on the Necrofex Colossus. Check out all those abilities. I'm not going to go over all of that, but he has access to Pit of Shades, which I see, Invocation of Nehek for healing, Roth's Moondial to summon. No doubt he has the other spell from the Lore of the Deeps that allows him to summon more Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs. And the Tide of Skjold is here in the center. They have perfect vigor and I think increased leadership. Yes, thanks to Rowdy. And then a unit that I can't believe I missed right off the bat, the Bloody Reaver Deck Guard. So the most powerful infantry that the Vampire Coast can muster. This guy is walking in the wrong way. He realizes they're about to go into a meat grinder. Let's slow-mo that a little bit. But they are the anti-large variant. And what makes them special, as opposed to the other standard Depth Guard, is that they have the same ability as the Regiment of Renown War Mammoth for Norska, and that they can pop and rage and give themselves a static 44% damage resistance. It lasts 22 seconds, and they also, of course, have Frenzy plus the Hunger for that hit point replenishment. So here we go. Queen Bess is firing its payloads. Going to be racking up some early kills, 116 kills. Why we moved, I'll never know. I think, honestly, my ally was just so eager to get them into range with Queen Bess that he moved up his entire army, not really realizing that that was completely unnecessary and ultimately, you know, perhaps not going to be the best strategy. So let's go ahead and put it into standard speed. I scouted these units out. I know they're here. I don't want to get shot to pieces by the gutter runners with slings. So I'm just going to play back a little bit with my Carrion. Carrion are very good at swarming down Sun Dragons. If you can give them a few chevrons here and there, they'll actually take down a Sun Dragon in the long run. Amazing shot on the Swordmasters of Hoeth, a very high value target. Gotta love that. Did I miss some Rat Ogres? Yeah, there are some Rat Ogres intermixed. There's two groups here that I see. Count Noctilus is charging forward. You know, I understand wanting to create as much distance between your artillery and your front line as possible for the sake of, you know, this battle. But I don't know. I feel like it just wasn't really the correct choice to move forward when we had the artillery advantage. So all of these cheap infantry units are going to come here and blob them up. But check out my allies' gun line here. Just unfortunately, completely useless. They're sitting at the very last tip. If they just cross this threshold here, they might be able to shoot a little bit into the back lines. Count Noctilus is getting gunned down by the Sisters of Avalorn. This Gunnery White should be standing next to Queen Bess, but Queen Bess is gone. Queen Bess is offline. Using the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower to snipe it out, they were able to destroy the actual unit model, and they're not going to get any value from that whatsoever. I sent out my Necropolis Knights with halberds just to scout this corner area to make sure there weren't any other sneaky rats hiding behind us. Also because there's no real good targets for them at the moment. So I'm going to be bringing them into the fight at some point here. What I'm trying to do is figure out, is this the engagement that we want to take? We have no lines of sight whatsoever. My Ushapti are useless. My Bone Giant is pretty much useless. He's getting some good shots. I'm using him to counter this artillery here, and I get a Skull Storm, a nice Skull Storm into this back line, and it's going to do quite a bit of damage. Not the most expensive units, but I was more hoping that it would hit the Sisters of Avalorn than anything else. And I'm going to move forward now with my Skeleton Spearmen. Anywhere I see a gap, I'm going to send forward a Skeleton Spearman to try and plug it up. But the infantry quality for our opponents is so much better than ours that it's not really a good trade. We're not getting any value from our ranged units whatsoever. So at this point, I'm like, you know what? I can't have my Ushapti sitting at the bottom of a hill. I'm going to run them around to this position here and try and shoot into the sides of these units. Pit of Shades going off from Count Noctilus. That's a very good Pit of Shades on these Storm Vermin. Luckily, he did not get all the way sniped out. But unfortunately, the Gunnery White is now in an awkward position as well with no artillery to buff. He's just kind of a dinky, you know, shooting unit. High Queen Khalida is getting into the mix. Going to be 1v1ing this assassin and absolutely destroying it. Necropolis Knights with halberds getting into the mix as well. It's going to be hard for me to find a home. I see Lord Stroke, I think, is kind of isolated here, and I'm going to get on him in just a moment. I'm trying to make sure that I allocate my resources wisely. My Carrion right now are being a little bit mismicroed. That's unfortunate. But I get some of my Carrion on the Sun Dragon to tie it down. My Ushapti are positioning. The Bone Giant still sitting at the bottom of this hill. 24 kills on it, but I kind of, at this point, I was forced to leave it here. I felt like if I put it at the top of the hill, or tried to crest the hill in this way, the Warp Lightning Cannons would absolutely dumpster me. And I get control of my Carrion right now, and I'm going to send them into the back line on these two Gutter Runners with Slingers. And they're going to be, you know, pretty good at taking them out. Carrion trying to tie down whatever units they can to keep them from shooting at me. Sepulchral Stalkers getting into the sidelines. May use them to chase down some of these routing units. These are actually just some standard Skeleton Spearmen. I'm going to use them to help screen in case there's any type of unit that wants to come and contest my Ushapti. We're going to be targeting down the Sun Dragon and bursting that off the battlefield. Salt Lord Scudlers throwing their bombs. See if they do any work. Storm Vermin are getting crushed. I mean, that's a little bit of damage, not much. You could argue my Skeleton Spears might be doing that damage. But they're holding everything back. We're making gaps through the front lines, and I'm sending in my Sepulchral Stalkers. They don't have a lot of good targets. They didn't bring a lot of large units for them to fight. So they're stuck engaging Spear Infantry, which is not where they want to be. Necropolis Knights circling this assassin. King Takesha's Scorpion Legion, poisoning. My ally has kind of forgotten about his units here. They're just sitting and taking fire. Meanwhile, I'm pushing forward. High Queen Khalida is taking a bit of a beating. Not a lot of kills as of yet. The summoned Plague Monks are tying us down. But they're also running away now, so that's good. But my Ushabti have kind of found a home. We're attempting to take out the Fireborn. That unit of Spearmen came in handy. If the Fireborn were able to get onto my Ushabti with their fire damage and their anti-large, they would absolutely dumpster them. And my Sepulchral Stalkers here also being held a bit in reserve. The Carrion are managing to chase off these Gunner Runner Slingers. But our opponents just have this huge blob. Loremaster, Swordmasters, Phoenix Guard, all very healthy. And they're just kind of sitting around all of this Warp Lightning. My Bone Giant is coming to the top of the hill now. High Queen Khalida was taking some focus fire for a minute, so I pulled her back. And my Lich Priest just trying to get Soul Storms off. And there goes my Bone Giant getting super messed up. And that's why I didn't want to bring him to the top of the hill. Like I said, this was the absolute worst way we could have engaged. It didn't fit our army comp at all. We really needed to be the ones on the defensive. See, I'm getting that poison missile damage off from the Sepulchral Stalkers. It's a bit of an awkward angle, but they are hitting the Spearmen and doing some damage. But that's going to be the rest of their ammunition. They have none left. They need to engage in melee in order to be effective now. Yeah, lots of zombies and lots of Spearmen. My infantry units are pretty much crap. They were only designed to hold the front line long enough for my range units to get value. I'm moving my Bone Giant away from the front line so he doesn't take that last few attacks. He's crumbling, so he is losing HP, but I'm still going to be able to get some last minute value from him. The Lich Priest of Nankara still has some Winds of Magic left. I know I get some other good spellcasting done. Ooh, what's this? Another summon. Lord Scroak has just been summoning all battle. Yeah, and that was... Look how spectacular that looks. That was from High Queen Khalida. She shoots out that venom from her staff. Almost 30 kills there, it looked like. Yeah, it was 30 kills exactly on the Swordmasters of Hoeth. That's amazing. It's a powerful ability. So, Rod of Corruption going off from Lord Scroak. He was just kind of waiting for that blob. And Tyrion also is an amazing duelist. I don't want to let him get on High Queen Khalida, so I'm going to bring in my Necropolis Knights to tie him down. The Death Guard are crumbling. The Zombie Power Deckhand mobs are crumbling. Bit of missed micro there, it looks like, from the Warp Lightning Cannon. In the meantime, I'm using my Bone Giant to snipe out these units that have been kind of forgotten about on the wings. And even though he was near death, when we first saw him, he was at just a couple kills. Now he's up to 38. So he's getting some of that last second value. My Ushabti are nearly out of ammunition. Tyrion's coming in pretty hard. I'm not sure if we can take him out. Even with all the focus fire, he's got that Heart of Avalorn, so he'll be able to heal quite nicely. And my ally is just pretty much done. I didn't even see Count Noctilus go down. I can only imagine he was sniped out pretty hard. My Lich Priest is now getting focused. Yeah, I know I got another Skull Storm down. I have 88 kills on my Lich Priest. I'm not sure if it's something that I did already. I feel like I did one in this area here. The Gunnery Wight up to 18 kills. Just sitting here with his rifle, poking targets. The Salt Lord Sculler is one of the last things on the battlefield. 68 kills on them, not bad. They were held in such deep reserve, and they were on a very good target for most of the battle. High Queen Khalida dueling this assassin. Would easily be able to take it out if it were allowed to just sit and fight against each other. But with no more ammunition left on the Ushabtis, the Chosen of the Gods, they're going to be forced to engage in melee, but with really no support. These Ushabti here are pinned in by the Fireborn. Only 15 models left, but that's enough. The Illyrian Reavers also were able to fire almost all of their ammunition in this battle. Lich Priest still alive, but I'm starting to crumble, purely due to army losses. And yeah, that's going to be the game. And I missed my Ushabti summon, but I think I had it in the back lines on the artillery. And I was able to get in there pretty nicely. So I want to say it got like 50 kills or so. It's a pretty useful Ushabti summon. Okay. What a big game. It was a big game. And for me, if I'd have been in Discord with my ally, I think we would have won that game easily. Like, easily won that game. And not because our opponents were bad, but just because in this map we would have forced them to come to us. So let's take a look at some of the value that wasn't generated, because I think that speaks louder than the opposite. So what I look here and I see, 0 kills, 0 kills, 0 kills, 0 kills, 9 kills. I mean, these are all the units that really didn't have any line of sight whatsoever. Queen Bess, 374 kills before it got sniped out, but it didn't need to get sniped out. It could have been so far in the back line for that entire battle that nothing would have been able to get to it. We could have protected it much easier had it not been at the bottom of that hill. Zombie Pirates did what they were supposed to do. Count Noctilus, 50 kills is great, but it's not telling the true tale of the tape when you consider all of the summons he no doubt was able to get down. And the Lamprey's Revenge, surprisingly, only 8 kills. They're an enormously tanky unit. They normally stick around and get tons of value. And then also you look here, I mean, in the last minute, my Bone Giant was able to get, 40 or so kills. But it was kind of just too little too late. This number I would have expected to be in the 100 plus had we been able to sit back and let it fire. Carrion did their job. My Spearmen did their job. But this was not what they were meant to do. If I knew I was going to be charging forward, I definitely would have taken Swordsmen over Spearmen in anticipation of, not needing that extra melee defense, but valuing the melee attack stats higher. Shopty Great Bows did great. My Sepulchral Stalkers, some of them went into mismatches, unfortunately. And without much cavalry to counter, the Necropolis Knights didn't really have a home. They're very good at catching and tying down, let's say, a Tyrion type unit. 243 kills. No doubt he had some amazing Sunfangs. But without much artillery, without much cavalry, they didn't really have a home as well. High Queen Khalida did great, but her whole synergy was based around being able to sit inside of a pocket with her, archery buffs and allow my Shopti to do much better damage, as well as Queen Bess. Sitting her near Queen Bess is some amazing synergy, and yeah, we just didn't take advantage of it. So good play here from the High Elf player, using that Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower to snipe out Queen Bess. The Sun Dragon ended up becoming a pincushion long before he could get off any breath attacks. The Sisters of Avalorn were used to great effect to focus down targets, and you'll see some low numbers here, but these are mostly because these units were held in such deep reserve into the late game so that they wouldn't be, the focus of AoE spells and things like that. Holding on to your most expensive units that you don't need to throw into melee sometimes is a pretty valuable strat. And then the Skaven player, of course, did amazing. Lord Skrulk summoned all game long Clan Rats, Plague Monks, and did tons of damage. These Death Runners eventually got into the battle. Death Runners are an awesome unit. 166 kills does not surprise me. And I think on their side of the battlefield, the MVP was probably these Warp Lightning Cannons, focusing down single target entities and then eventually being allowed to focus down different types of units. These kills are huge, but some of these 1 kills are, very important single target entities. So they did a lot as well. I was able to punt around these assassins pretty well with High Queen Khalida. She's a pretty nice bully on that serpent that she rides. But yeah, great play from everybody. Thanks to my ally Cottonmouth Gamer for some good games, Macabre and Menace. You guys were great opponents and great sports. And thank you to you guys watching at home. Once again, my name is Brett, and my channel is Good Talk Gaming. I hope you enjoyed today's video. It was a wild one. I have another game that I want to cast. I'm not sure if I will, though. Just let me know what you guys think. I'm going to tell you, it's basically me fighting a newer player on ladder, right? And when I say new player, I mean a very new player. And I kind of want to talk about some of the ways that you can play better as a new player. Maybe go over a couple of my key hotkeys that I use, and just some of the general strategies for ways to get into the multiplayer scene when you are a newer player and you don't just want to get stomped every battle, right? And some of the factions that I think are good picks for getting that type of experience. So, I don't want to put anybody on blast and make him look like he's a bad player. I think he's just a new player. So I was kind of debating on whether or not to cast that, but I think it does have some value. So I may be bringing that to you guys tomorrow. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Later.